I used to do loads of videos on cheap first cars, but the problem with first cars is that generally it takes a few years for cars to get cheap enough for new ones to come onto the market. And so it has actually been an entire year since my last first car video, but I am back again today to talk to you about 10 cheap first cars that you can buy for under £5,000. How's it going, people? Welcome back to the channel. If you haven't seen my previous videos on first cars, the same kind of format. I've insured myself as a 17-year-old driver, I'm obviously not 17, who lives in an area for very average insurance prices, and I've basically used all of the information from one of my previous videos on how to get cheap car insurance, so go check that video out if you want to know more. Don't forget, by the way, that in the UK, so prices in other countries might be different, and whenever you buy any second-hand car, maintenance, repairs, insurance, that's all the good stuff that's important to remember. If you enjoyed this video, do hit the like button, I'd really appreciate it, and I'll drop this video down to £3,000 instead if this video gets 1,000 likes. If you're new here, do hit subscribe, you get 2 videos every single week, and it's free. Without further ado, let's get into the video. Let's kick this video off with the fastest car on the list, and a car that you'd probably never expect to actually be pretty reasonable on insurance, the Alfa Romeo MiTo Quadrifoglio. Of all the cars on this list, if I could go back in time and choose one as my first car, this would have been it. With its 1.4 litre turbocharged inline-four that produces 167 brake horsepower, more than double most other cars on this list, taking it to 60 in 7.3 seconds, very quick for your first car. I managed to get an insurance quote for 17-year-olds in an average area of insurance for £1,184 with a black box and £1,687 without, which isn't terrible considering the average black box price for 17-year-olds is around £1,500. It's a lovely looking car in my opinion. It has some super cool features like carbon back belt bucket seats if you can find one in the right spec. I think it's just insane that at 17 you could tick off owning an Alfa Romeo and a Quadrifoglio at that. These start at around £2,500. With £5,000 you get a 2012 model with around 100k on it. Electrical gremlins have reared their ugly heads on these, but the engine is supposed to be pretty solid from a reliability point of view. Tax is quite high though, £165 per year, and miles per gallon is second lowest on the list at 47. Next up is the Mark V Polo, which is a generation newer than the car that I own, but I still have a lot of experience with. It comes with a 1.2 litre inline-3 engine that produces 59 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in a very sedate time of 15.6 seconds, the slowest on the list, but I still managed to get a £1,110 quote with a black box and £1,679 without, so we're getting a tad cheaper. Add on road tax at £135 and miles per gallon at 51, and you've got a pretty cheap car to run. What's nice about this Polo in my opinion is that it feels pretty new still today. I think the step from the 993 to this was pretty big from an aesthetic point of view, both externally and internally, so at the time of making this video neither parts of the car look particularly dated in my opinion. When you consider it comes with everything you need and more as a first time driver, from infotainment to practicality to safety, you are laughing in one of these. It's probably my personal top pick, but of course I am biased. £2,000 a minimum you'll find these listed for, and for £5,000 you get a 2011 example with around 60,000 miles on the clock. Generally they're pretty good on reliability, but do watch for coil packs going and an extensive use of oil. Taking 8th on the list is another first car that I reviewed in the past, the Suzuki Swift, but this time it's the UK second generation that ran from 2010 to 2017, with its 1.2 litre inline-4 engine that produces 92 brake horsepower, which will take from 0 to 60 in 11.9 seconds. Add on reasonable road tax at £30 per year and 56 miles per gallon fuel economy figures, and this is definitely a cheap route into motoring. Insurance from this is good too. I found black box quotes starting from around £1,185 and non-black box quotes at £1,651. Where the first generation Swift did get some stick for not having all the features you might expect of a cheap first car, the second gen rectified that and simply updated the formula that made the first gen such a great little car for young drivers. I would say it's probably among the best overall offerings on this list, given its size and space, practicality and usability. These start at around £1,800. Over £5,000 you get a 2012 model with around 60,000 miles on the clock. The engine is known to be good, but clutches have had their problems, though I wouldn't call it common. Main complaints from owners seem to be wear and tear on the interiors happening too quickly. Next up we have the baby brother to the Vauxhall Corsa, the Adam, which has a 1.2 litre inline-4 block that produces 69 brake horsepower, taking from 0 to 60 in 14.4 seconds. It also comes with a tax bill of £135 per year and does around 44 miles per gallon, which is actually the lowest on this list. In terms of insurance though, with a black box I found a quote at £1,173 and without out, it was £1,489, not bad at all. This is Vauxhall or Opel's response to the Enzo Ferrari, being this is also named after Opel's founder, Adam. I'm sure you can see the similarities. But being serious, it is actually a nice little first car, even if it only existed for around 7 years before Vauxhall sacked it off to focus on SUVs. It was highly specable from new, so do look for an example that suits your fancy, and don't just settle. £3,000 around the lowest that I could find these listed for, and for £5,000 you'll be looking at a 2013 example with around 60,000 miles on it. There were a bunch of recalls on these to be aware of, so do make sure your car was sorted by Vauxhall for any of them before buying. Fuel pumps failing is the main common problem I could find. Other than that, it's mostly wear and tear to be aware of according to owners. Next up we have the hugely popular but not always for blokes Fiat 500 with its 1.2 litre inline-4 engine that makes 69 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 12.5 seconds, plus it only costs £30 per year on road tax and does around 58 miles per gallon, pretty good. On insurance I managed to get a quote at £939 with a black box and £1,449 without one, so we're slowly getting towards the cheaper end of the spectrum. Though it was aimed at the more feminine end of the market, it is undeniably a nice offering for the first car market regardless of who you are, as like the Adam it comes with a bunch of specs, an interior with clearly actually some real design, love and thought put into it, and overall a very successful modern nod to a classic city car. It's won more than 40 awards since its release, sold incredibly well, and even won world's most beautiful car, and though it's too small to be super practical, it would do the vast majority of what any 17-year-old would need it to. These start at around the £1,500 mark, and for 5k you'll be looking at a 2013 example with around 50,000 miles on it. There are known problems with these, particularly around the clutch, suspension and a few other areas, but in general these are cheap to own and maintain. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please do let me know in the comments down below if you are, and subscribe as well if you're new here. And a quick reminder, I'll do the same video again under £3,000 instead if this video gets 1,000 likes. Next up we have a car that was for a time the most popular hire car in Europe, meaning that there are many high mileage examples that have been run by hire car companies, and though they may have been driven aggressively, may also have been maintained fairly well. They come with a 1 litre inline-3 engine that makes 69 brake horsepower, which takes from 0 to 60 in 14 seconds. One major benefit of this car is the fact that it costs £20 per year on road tax, and miles per gallon is good too at 47. Then when you add on the fact that I managed to get a black box quote at £1,025 and a non-black box quote for £1,408, and for a 17-year-old it is not a horrendous offering. The Twingo 3 came as a result of a link up between Daimler and Renault, and is one of the newest cars on the list, so comes pretty well equipped, and having been in one, it's pretty inoffensive and does the job in most instances. They're listed from around £4,000, and if you went all for the full 5k, you'd be looking at a 2015 example with around 40,000 miles on the clock. There are some known problems with build quality on these, but in general they haven't been too bad on reliability. I literally just reviewed one of these and I wasn't super kind to it, but I cannot deny that for £5,000 the Kia Picanto remains one of the best overall first car offerings, which is partly a result of its 7-year manufacturer warranty, which is a real kicker. It has a 1 litre inline-3 engine that produces 65 brake horsepower and does 0 to 60 in 14.1 seconds. It will also only cost £20 per year in road tax and manages 64 miles per gallon. Insurance quotes I got were £960 with a black box and £1,373 without, so again, not bad for your first year of motoring. I found that though this car doesn't handle at all well and is a bit vague, it does do everything you need to as a first car, and in general it's a cheap and cheerful route into motoring, and the boot is the only thing that I would maybe say is a little bit too tiny, so don't expect it to be particularly useful from that perspective. £1,500 the minute you'll find them listed for, and for £5,000 you'll get a nice example from 2015 with 35,000 miles on it. As mentioned, one of the key benefits of these cars is the 7-year warranty, so expect these to be in pretty good condition as and when you get a hold of one if it's newer than 7 years old. The Ford Ka Plus is not a car I would have considered as a first, as I'd always be looking more at the Fiesta size, but the 3rd generation car is really a decent offering with its 1.2 litre inline-4 engine making 69 brake horsepower, taking it from 0 to 60 in 14.1 seconds. It's slightly more expensive on road tax at £165 and would do around 51 miles per gallon according to manufacturer. Altogether I managed to get quoted £978 £1,299 with a black box and £1,314 without, neither of which are particularly horrendous from a 17-year-old's perspective. This third gen was marketed as the Car Plus here in Europe and was introduced in 2016, making it the newest car on the list. It's also actually not that far off the size of the Fiesta, with Ford considering it within the size limits of the small hatch class rather than the A segment, and it's definitely a lot bigger than the original generation while also being much more usable. These will cost around £5,000 at the bottom end, so they're already at our 5k limit. There have been problems with battery wiring, but so far it's relatively new and there's little to talk about in the way of common issues. Just missing out on the top spots is the Toyota Aygo with its 1 litre inline-3 engine that makes 68 brake horsepower and does 0 to 60 in 13.7 seconds. It also costs £0 per year in tax, meaning it's the cheapest on the list, and runs around 65 miles per gallon, meaning it's the most economical too. As if that wasn't enough to sway you, with the black box I got a quote at £1,013 and without I got £1,284, which is not too shabby. The first gen received 2 facelifts in its lifetime, with the second facelift being more than affordable within our price range. It was built alongside the Peugeot 107 and Citroën C1, but the facelifts helped to keep it updated and different to its two cousins. The most recent facelift is arguably the nicest and ran from 2012 to 2014. The thing to note about the car is that it probably is the best value for money car on the list. It's been noted by many independent reviewers as the most reliable car in the subcompact class. It costs barely anything to own and run and will leave more money in you or your parents' pockets in the longer term. These will run you around £2,000 at the bottom end, and for £5,000 you get a 2014 example, still with around 50,000 miles on the clock. Taking the top spot on this list is the VW Up, thanks to its incredibly cheap insurance quotes at £940 with a black box and £1,189 without, which is pretty sick. The Up comes with a 1 litre inline-3 engine that produces 59 brake horsepower, taking it from 0 to 60 in 14.4 seconds, plus it has an annual road tax cost of £165 and MPG figure of 51. When the VW Group released the new small family group of cars in 2011, the Up was arguably the flagship model, with the Seat Me and Skoda Citigo offering slightly modified alternatives depending on your budget. But of course, being VW, there was impetus put on going for it as the main example, and though it is very small and really not my kind of car at all, it has done very well for the brand, selling hundreds of thousands every year between 2012 to 2019 before tapering off. It is a simpler, smaller version of the Polo, is the best way I can describe it. What the Polo is to the Golf, the Up is to the Polo. These start at around the £2,500 mark, and for 5k we'll be getting a 2013 model with 30,000 miles on it. Reliability is a similar story to the Polo too, so watch out for those pesky VW coil packs. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Do let me know in the comments down below if you did, or whatever your thoughts are about the cars or picks that I made. I'd really appreciate it. Do hit subscribe if you're new here, but a massive thanks as always to the patrons for their support, and to you guys as well for watching. I'll see you in the next one.